Certainly there have been innovations in organization. Certainly NATO's area of activity has expanded, and the first out-of-area actions took place in Bosnia and then in Kosovo and now obviously in Afghanistan, and even in Iraq NATO has been involved in training missions. NATO has certainly looked at adapting itself militarily, where it has placed an emphasis on being lighter and more mobile and thinking about how it changes itself from a ground force oriented military structure to something which operates in a wider global environment. And still we have to answer the question, why NATO, and is it effective? Can it be effective? And part of the answer is going to depend on what's the threat. How do we understand what NATO is organizing itself against or toward or in prevention of? Is that a global set of threats which are different from the threats that we've understood and thought of before as major international security threats? Things like climate change or nuclear proliferation or transnational terrorism? And if so, where does NATO fit into that equation, and how does it place itself as an organization? If we can't define that threat, what certainly is likely to happen is that Russia is going to continue to perceive NATO's role, and certainly any enlargement of NATO, as a threat to Russia. And so we'll have an inherent tension that is built into the Russia relationship. What we've also seen is that NATO has to have a better understanding of how it operates, not just as a defense and military organization, but in its relationship with civilian entities. And that's nowhere demonstrated better than in Afghanistan, where you have NATO involved in virtually every country from NATO, and a total of 40 countries involved, but you have a UN mandate giving credibility and legitimacy to the mission there, and still we see NATO struggling, the U.S. struggling, and as we saw in President Obama's address on Afghanistan just last week, what he said was that the make or break of the new strategy will depend not on military forces but on civilian capacity. And if that's the case, does NATO build that into its capabilities? Because certainly those capabilities are not there yet.